My name is Jay Edwards here with Mo DeWitt. Remember, the answers given on this show do not constitute legal advice and do not create an attorney-client relationship. For legal advice, you can call the office anytime at 1-800-DeWitt-LAW or interact with the show by sending an email to ask@DeWittLaw.com, or you can call 407-53-MOSES and leave your question in a voicemail right there. Every Sunday morning right here, 10 a.m., you'll learn how Florida's legal issues affect you with your host, Mo DeWitt of the DeWitt Law Firm. Mo will answer your questions to discuss the latest legal issues affecting the citizens of Central Florida. Mo, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. How was yours, Jay?
Good. Do I look thinner to you?
Oh, much thinner.
You're
Always looking thin.
You're such a liar. My goal was to eat my weight in turkey, and I almost made my goal.
I'm proud of you. Very proud of you.
Let's talk.
Now, how'd you do the turkey?
So I roasted one. I had a 25-pound bird that I roasted in the oven.
Oh, that's a big bird.
Yep. And then I did a 15-pound bird deep fried.
Okay. How was the deep fried?
Amazing.
I've always wanted to do that. I've never actually gotten the setup to do it, but
Cajun Creole butter injection with it, and then
can't argue with that.
No, it was amazing, and it's funny because the first year I did it, people were like, Tradition, what are you doing with this? You know?
Yeah.
And now the first tray of turkey that goes is always a deep fried, and there's, all right, where's the rest of the baked stuff left?
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to do the roasted one to get the gravy, because with the deep fried, you don't get the gravy, but everybody says the deep fried's delicious.
Fantastic. Next year, come over.
All right.
I got you.
That's a binding invite right there.
Absolutely. Got it right here on recorded. I still haven't clened up my mess from it, though. It's still sitting in the yard, too. Like, maybe I'll come out and do some mozzarella cheese
leave it for
sticks.
next year. It'll be fine.
Just scoop out all the stuff from it. Let's talk about this book real quick. DeWitt's Divorce Guide. Your book. It's here. National bestseller, Your Guide to Divorce in Florida.
Yep.
How long did it take? I know it just recently came out. And is this something that you had planned on doing all along, or is it just one of those things that you said, you know what, I talk about this stuff a lot. Let me put it in a paperback form so I can help people as much as I can.
Well, that was the original idea, is basically, for us, we deal with divorce basically every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're saying the same stuff over and over and over again. And while, the client's individual situation may vary, the legal advice is still very much the same in a lot of scenarios.
Sure, yeah.
So, I actually started that about 4 years ago, and, started and stopped it several times just because, don't have a whole lot of free time to write books. But we finally got it finished, and it's out there, and, it's definitely not a replacement for legal advice, just like this show isn't, but it gives you a general guide on how divorce works. And I think one of the scariest things for people, if you've never been through a divorce, is you just don't understand how it works. If you've been through it, you can kind of say, okay, I understand how the parts work. But we get a lot of clients who, they're going through the process and you just don't understand how, part A connects to part C. Why am I doing this now? Why do I have to provide this information?
Mm-hmm.
So, the book is hopefully there to help people kind of understand the process, how to get through the process, kind of what some of the pitfalls are, and why you need to do certain things. Because I'm a big believer in, educating the public. And so if you're going through a divorce, if you think you may be going through a divorce, or if you have a friend who's going through a divorce, it's completely free. At least for listeners, it's free. And you can give it to them, and hopefully it will give them a sense of understanding the process and learning a little bit about divorce, so it's not so scary. So you know why you're doing things, what's going to be expected of you, and kind of help guide you through that process.
It's called the DeWitt's Divorce Guide, Your Guide to Divorce in Florida. Where can people get the book right now?
Well, it is on Amazon. If you'd like a copy, we'll mail you one. We're still getting the website set up for it. So just send us an email at ask@DeWittLaw.com, and we'll mail you out a copy.
I will even sign the first two. No, just
kidding. Two. It's limited to two.
That's it. I'll also give you my deep fried turkey recipe.
There you go.
Okay, so crazy news story earlier in the beginning of the week. The car that crashed into the fireworks place. I know that you shared a video about that. Like, when it comes to liability and something like that, what happens in that situation?
Well, obviously the investigation's still ongoing. And for those who didn't catch the story, it was over in West Melbourne. There was a vehicle that crashed into a Phantom fireworks store, which then ignited all the fireworks in the store. Crazy looking scene.
Unbelievable video.
Unfortunately, the driver of the vehicle did pass away. It's my understanding, based on initial reports, this could have changed, that nobody inside the store was seriously injured, which is obviously good. And so we don't really know how the accident happened at this point. If, person just wasn't paying attention and drove off the road. There were some reports that they were hit by another vehicle into the store. We don't really know what happened at this point in time.
Right.
But, I did use it as an example because if someone was in the store and was injured and they had uninsured motorist coverage, which, as you know, we talk about on this show a lot because I believe it's probably the most important coverage that you can have in Florida, having uninsured motorist coverage on your vehicle. And the reason why it's so important is, number one, there's a lot of drivers who drive in Florida without any bodily injury coverage. But also in a scenario like this, if they were inside the store, a car comes through and hits them or hurts them, even though those people are just standing there, they're in a store, they're on the sidewalk, and they're not in a vehicle, their uninsured motorist coverage can still come into play.
Even though it hadn't have anything to do with them in their own car.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And so, the uninsured motorist coverage then steps into the shoes of the driver who hit them and can provide coverage for, injuries, lost wages, just like if someone had bodily injury coverage, it basically steps into those shoes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's why it's so important. So, hopefully, that the initial reports were correct and nobody was really injured, who was standing inside the store. But if somebody was, that's when this kind of coverage could come into play. So it's something you don't really think about a lot when you're buying car insurance. Certainly, it's
give me the cheapest, the bare minimum sometimes.
Right, but this kind of coverage can come into play in different aspects of your life. Same thing if you're out there on your bike and somebody hits you, or if you're walking down the sidewalk and a car hits you, your uninsured motorist coverage can actually come into play and provide some protection for you.
When it comes to car insurance, I know that people say it's always good to continuously shop around and get quotes because your insurance can go up over the years, whether you did anything wrong or not. And there's certain companies that offer, we give you the one free pass, that type of thing. What if I'll speak from my personal experience. I just found out that my insurance, since I got it about 3 years ago, has almost tripled since that time. And everybody in my house has, safe driver, no citations. Is it one of those things where you just go ahead and shop around? Can people call their insurance companies? Like, is there any tricks to try and get your rates back down in Florida?
Well, there's no tricks necessarily, but I do encourage people to shop around, routinely, but make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And that's where people get in trouble is, they may call their existing agent who may be, just a, agent for one insurance company.
Right.
And they'll say, oh, well, we can reduce your rate by doing X, Y, or Z, but they're really just removing coverage there. So what you want to do is call around to a few different companies or use an agent who shops multiple companies who can then, provide quotes for those companies and tell you what the difference in those quotes are. Actually, the former host of the show, Chris Crawford, recently reached out to me and had me do the same thing for him. Yeah, he had 3 different quotes there, and he was like, "What's the difference here between the 3 companies?
Right.
Between the coverages that they that they're offering, basically." Because obviously, you don't want one that has bare minimum coverage that doesn't really provide, just provides the bare legal coverage, which is almost nothing in Florida.
Right.
Is going to be a lot cheaper than something that's actually going to protect you. So you want to know what you're buying when you're buying it. And yeah, we've talked about this before. A lot of people, including myself, just want to buy the cheapest coverage out there, but you want to make sure you're protected at the same time.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, good to know. All right, let's go ahead and get to our questions. Again, if you have some questions, you need some legal advice, you can send that email to askask@dewittlaw.com, or you can also call if that's easier and leave a voicemail at 407-53-MOSES, 407-53-MOSES, and you can send it right there. All right, so our first question is a nice short one. Hey, Mo, buying a house when I'm separated, I'm not divorced yet. Can the husband get the half, it says? Can the husband still get half, I guess?
Well, it typically, in short, most likely not. So, if you want a more detailed explanation, basically a judge as part of a divorce can divide an asset based on 3 dates. They can divide it based on date of separation, date of filing the divorce, or the date the divorce is finalized.
Okay.
In this case, they're obviously already separated. So most likely the judge would use the date of separation, meaning this person gets to keep the house without, having to pay their spouse any share of the home. And the judge is supposed to pick one of those 3 dates based on what's equitable, based on what's fair. Now, one area where people kind of get into trouble with this sometimes is if you're taking out a mortgage in Florida and you're still legally married, your wife is going to have to acknowledge the mortgage. She doesn't have to be listed as a borrower, or your spouse, I should say.
Right.
Because it goes both ways, obviously. They don't have to be listed as a borrower, but they have to acknowledge it. And that's part of the Florida's homestead protection. Basically, if it's your homestead, you can't basically sign away your spouse's right to their homestead in that property.
Okay.
So they're going to have to acknowledge that homestead. So typically in this situation, which happens a lot in a divorce, we have request that the other spouse sign 2 documents. One, that they're going to agree to acknowledge the mortgage, and one that they waive any right in the home. That way it doesn't become an issue in the divorce case if things, heat up or get more contentious. So that's typically the safest way to do it. Obviously, in some divorce cases, the spouse doesn't agree to just acknowledge the mortgage or sign that waiver.
Just playing hardball, just being jerky. Is that what that is?
Usually, just being difficult.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no reason, unless they're alleging somehow that there's marital funds in it or something like that. And then you have to go to a different type of financing, which is usually a higher interest rate, where you're buying it as an investment property rather than your homestead. So it can get a little more expensive that way. There are ways to do it. Obviously, if you're using cash, that's not an issue. But when it comes to the mortgage, you have to kind of navigate those issues.
That would be tough. You're trying to move on with your life and get the next stage of, the next chapter written. And your ex is like, nope, not signing that paper, but I'm sure it happens.
Oh, it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
That's gotta be frustrating.
And we even see it where, people have been separated for years and they haven't even started the divorce process yet. They've just kind of been living apart.
Right.
They have no intention of getting back together. Then they go to buy a house and the title company says, hey, we can't close this house for you because this is going to be your homestead and we need your spouse to sign off on it.
And legally, you're still married.
Yep.
Oh, man. It's like, all right, hop 2 steps back and call Mo.
Yep. and we have people call for that all the time, honestly.
All right. All right. We got a couple of minutes left in our first segment here. So let's, I got another short one for you. The appliance installers from a popular chain store damaged our tile floor. And so matching the new tile with the old tile, it's going to be absolutely impossible. Are they responsible for the replacement of our floors?
So typically, whatever damage they cause, they're supposed to return it to the condition it was in before.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the only way that they can do that, then they're going to have to rip out whatever tile it is and make it right. Essentially, if there's no other way to find the tile that matches it,
okay,
you have a right not to have a mismatched floor. It'd be no different than if they got a stain or a burn mark or something in a carpet, and you're not just going to X-Acto knife out the little square and put a different color square in there.
It's a nice blue dot you have right there sitting on the middle of your carpet.
And that's part of why those installers carry insurance for these types of things. It's unfortunate it got damaged, but you have a right to basically have it restored to the way it was before. It's not supposed to be better than it was before, so you don't get marble
upgrading.
Marble floors or whatever the most expensive kind of floor is.
Right.
But they should be able to restore it back to the way it was.
Yeah, and I would assume that that's if you're a big box chain type store or whatever, you're covered. That's what their insurance is.
That's what their insurance is for. And actually, I heard a story about a moving company recently where, and I'll try to keep this quick because I know we're almost out of time, but the one of the biggest issues with movers is damaging the furniture.
Yeah.
So the moving company said, hey, we're going to get rid of our insurance, but we're going to pay that money to our movers. But if you move it, if you break it or damage it, it comes out of your paycheck. And guess what? Their claims went down significantly. And
wow.
And the movers were all happier because they got paid more.
Yeah, more money in your pocket.
Yeah.
Take your time with it.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of an interesting
That is
method,
interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if they do the same thing with like airports and luggage. Stop throwing stuff.
I don't know if it'll work there.
All right. You are listening to the DeWitt Law Review right here on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. If you've got a question, just like a couple of the ones that we just got to, and you want to get it in and ask Mo, send it to ask@dewittlaw.com, or you can leave a voicemail again, 407-53-MOSES, ask@DeWittLaw, spelled DEWITT.com. Or if you do need some legal advice, you can call the office anytime at 1-800-DeWitt-LAW. That's 1-800-DeWitt-LAW. Got a couple more questions from listeners coming up here. One of them is grandparents no longer get to see the grandson, and they're not very happy about that. Also, an ex has been incarcerated, and she wants to know, can I start chucking his stuff now that he's been locked up? So we'll get to these questions and more coming up in just a few minutes. You are listening to the DeWitt Law Review right here on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk.
About a year ago, I was in a really bad accident. I got my hand caught in a saw and I lost my thumb. Luckily, the doctors were able to put everything back together. Originally, we reached out to other firms to take my case and nobody would help us. But when we called Mr. DeWitt and his team, they were there to help through the whole thing. I'm extremely happy with the result. Extremely happy with the result. It was an easy process. They made it as easy as possible and we got the best possible result. Injured on the go, just call Mo.
Welcome back to the DeWitt Law Review on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. My name is Jay Edwards here with Mo DeWitt. And if you've got a question, you want to send it to us, we're going to get to some of yours right now. You can send us an email to ask@dewittlaw.com. You can call and leave a voicemail if that's easier for you, 407-53-MOSES. And also just know that if you have a question anytime and you do need some legal advice, you're welcome to call anytime. 1-800-DeWitt-LAW. That's 1-800-DEWITT-LAW. And I'm here with Mo DeWitt discussing the latest legal issues affecting the citizens of Central Florida. And Mo got a question from one of our listeners. They want to know, all right, my ex-husband has been locked up. They've been incarcerated for almost 3 years now. We got divorced 1 year ago. If his family hasn't come to get his stuff, am I allowed to just start throwing this stuff away and get it out of here?
So, there are abandoned property statutes in Florida, but I would venture to guess that your divorce decree in this situation would probably control, because usually, a divorce decree is going to divvy up all the property and say how it's to be distributed.
Right.
And so here we're dealing with personal property, I assume, furniture, clothes, stuff like that. And usually in many divorce decrees, at least, there's a provision that says, hey, you have so much time to come get your stuff, or you're supposed to get it by such and such a date. And then if they don't, most judges would say, hey, do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
So that's going to be the first place to start, is look at your divorce documents, see if they say anything about that. Now, if you want to be overly cautious, you could always file a motion in that divorce case and basically say, hey, he was supposed to pick up, or if there's no date, say, hey, there was no date specified. He hasn't picked up his stuff yet. It's been a year. You probably want to disclose that he's in prison. You'll have to serve him with a copy of the motion. And then that way the judge will hopefully issue an order that says, hey, have somebody come get it by this date or it's going to be disposed of.
Okay.
Because you don't want a situation where, now he's suing you for disposing of his property and saying it was not justified. We had a case before where a lady went to prison. They were not married, but some guy was kind of helping her with the property allegedly, and he ended up dying. So we don't exactly know what happened. But basically, the property disappeared from prison. She sued him. Of course, I think he was on his deathbed at the time, so he didn't respond to it. She got a default judgment. It became a big mess.
Oh man.
Yeah, there was an estate that had properties, and then she went after all those properties, and we had to undo the whole thing. But anyways, it can turn into a big headache. So your best case scenario is check those divorce documents, see if that already gives you language as to how that property is supposed to be dealt with. If not, you may want to file a motion with the court asking a judge to clarify that so that there absolutely is no dispute down the road.
If there is stuff that's there, and it's some things that, like heavy couches and a canoe and things like that, and he refuses to come pick it up by that 1 year date, and she has to hire somebody to come remove that stuff, is he then on the hook for that, and he's responsible for that too, if she can get him to pay?
Yeah, you could certainly ask for damages for the removal cost of doing that if he's not gonna do it. Or you could say, if it becomes my property, and you could sell it off if there's anything of value or whatever it may be. But whatever it is, you want to make sure it's in that court order from the judge, so there's absolutely no dispute as to how any funds are divvied up or how any damages have to be paid.
I could just imagine like having everything crammed in one room, and maybe you're trying now to rent that room out to somebody to make a little bit of income now that you only have one income coming into the house, and you can't do it because it's just taken up by his gigantic, teddy bear collection.
Yeah, not to mention, anybody who's ever moved knows how much of a pain it is to move all that junk. Whether it's got some value or not, it's still a lot of work to move all the personal property like that, box it up, get rid of it, whatever it may be. So yeah, either way, it's gonna be a headache, I'm sure.
I was always that guy with the truck, and I also
boy.
had the 10-foot flatbed trailer, open trailer. So I was always the
Yep.
guy. Hey Jay, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, click. I'm not taking your call. All right, send in your questions to us at ask@DeWittLaw.com. Call 407-53-MOSES. And if people do need some legal advice, Mo, whether maybe they just don't want to put it out on the air or whatever, what number can they call and when can they call?
You can give the office a call anytime, 1-800-DeWitt-LAW, 1-800-339-4885. Somebody answers that phone line 24 hours a day. It won't be me, obviously, in the middle of the night, but they can certainly take a message for you or schedule you a consultation to speak with one of the attorneys so that you can get some legal advice, and we'll hopefully get you pointed in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, we've got some more legal advice coming up. More of your questions are on the way. You're listening to the DeWitt Law Review on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk.
When you get injured on the go, you gotta call Mo, right? I was walking across the parking lot, and my ankle rolled, and I tripped, and broke 4 bones and tore ligaments in my ankle.
Trip and fall cases can be tough, but in this case, I'm thrilled that we were able to fight for Jamie and get her the justice she deserves.
Oh, my experience with you guys were great. You guys were awesome. You took care of all of my needs. You really put my mind at ease, and I felt really taken care of by you guys. I would definitely recommend Mo if anyone got injured on the go. I would definitely recommend Mo.
Welcome back to the DeWitt Law Review on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. My name is Jay Edwards here with Mo DeWitt of the DeWitt Law Firm. Mo, how can people ask you questions if they want to get some legal advice from you here on the radio?
All you have to do is send us an email, ask@dewittlaw.com, or you can leave a voicemail at 407-536-6737, and we'll answer it for you right here on there.
Just like this gentleman did here. Here's his question.
Hi, Moses. My name's Jim. Got a question for you. Had a pool put in about 6 years ago, and the interior of the pool, on our contract, we've got a lifetime warranty on that. We have now had a little bit of chipping where the side of the pool has come off. We've contacted the construction firm that built the pool, and they're saying it's not covered. The contract seems to be very clear that it is. Just wondering if you have a little advice from me as far as how to approach that with the pool company. Thank you so much.
Well, I think, first of all, he needs to have us over for a cookout, and we need to see it ourselves. No.
We need to do an inspection there.
All right, so what do you do about that?
So, the first thing you want to do, if you've called them, I assume he's called them and they're saying it's not covered.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to send them written notice, basically, of the damage and that you believe that it should be covered by the warranty. And
like including pictures or just like a letter form?
I mean, both if you can.
Okay.
If you can't do pictures, that's fine. But I would try to include pictures if you can.
Okay.
And send that to them both regular and certified mail so that you can prove that they got it or that you sent it to them. And then, if they respond, then they can, hopefully they'll respond back and say, hey, it either is covered or it's not covered because of X, Y, or Z.
Okay.
And then if they give you basically the denial reason, then you can look at the contract and see what the actual warranty covers. And then there may be some argument as to whether that's within the warranty or outside the warranty. If you still believe that should be covered by the warranty and they're still refusing to make the repair, then you may have to seek legal action by filing a lawsuit for damages against them. Basically, you'd want to go out and get a quote from another company to fix the damage and then basically file a lawsuit saying that's how much it's going to cost to fix it. This warranty was supposed to cover it, and therefore you owe me X amount of dollars. But before you get to any of those stages, right now, I'm assuming these communications are probably just via the phone. You gave them a call and said, hey, there's some chipping.
Right.
They said, hey, we don't cover chipping, and they, maybe they're just trying to get out of their warranty there. I don't know.
Probably works 1 out of every 3 times or something.
Exactly. So that's why you need to put them on notice, written notice, and then either they don't respond, you can say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and file the lawsuit. I put you on notice. You didn't respond. You were supposed to cover this by the warranty. Or they respond and say it's not covered because of X, Y, or Z. And then you can analyze whether it's worth moving forward with taking legal action against them further.
It's sometimes it's so hard to understand. And that's part of the selling point. Like, yeah, it comes with a lifetime warranty. And you're like, well, sweet. covered forever. And then like, no, you're not.
And a lot of times too, the salespeople will kind of tell you one thing, but the warranty actually says something else. And I've had this happen to me before where, you get those warranty documents and nobody's reading them.
Right.
But on a big purchase like a pool, you probably really should read it to see what it actually covers. Because the salespeople a lot of times will tell you, oh yeah, it covers, absolutely anything comes, happens
Bumper
to your pool.
bumper.
Right. We'll cover it for life, yada, yada. If you look at the details, it may be much more limited than that. So you want to actually look at the terms of the warranty and what it actually covers, because anytime you're dealing with a salesperson and you sign a contract like that, the oral representations are not binding. The only thing that's binding is what is in that contract. So that's why with big purchases like that, especially, it's very important to read the details.
So even if they kind of misled you a little bit, or even just accidentally told you something completely wrong, just because it's in paper and you did sign it, there's your signature.
That's what you're stuck with. Yeah, I mean, you can claim a fraudulent inducement action. Basically, they fraudulently induced you to enter into the contract. That's a much more difficult action to make. But at the end of the day, and usually most contracts say any oral representations are not binding.
Right.
The only thing that is binding between us and you is what is in this contract.
Gotcha. That covers them. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a question from a grandmother. She said, can our grandson's mother stop letting us see our grandson without any warning? She said, our son died in 2020. They were never married, but since then, he had come stay every other weekend until just a few months ago, and something has changed, and we have only seen him one time. I'm not after custody of him. I just want to see my grandson like she was permitting before. When I call about him coming to see us, she lets me talk to him, but she will not return my texts or calls about any actual visitation or spending time together with him. So grandma, she wants to see her grandson.
Yeah. So unfortunately, right now, grandparents really don't have any legal rights in Florida to time sharing or to see the child unless the parent consents. Obviously, this is a tough situation where one of the parents has passed away and the other parent's not allowing the grandkids or grandparents to see the child. So right now, grandparents in Florida really have no rights. Now, I know there was some legislation being proposed by the Markle family in Tallahassee, and that was a situation where he was actually a professor at Florida State College of Law, and he was murdered. And he was kind of allegedly murdered by the wife's family.
Okay.
I don't think the wife has actually been implicated in it, but it's kind of the wife's parents, and there was a hitman or something along those lines. I could be getting the facts not exactly right there, but basically, the father's parents now don't get to see the children. And so they're kind of alleging, well, it was the wife's family who may have been behind this. That's a wrongful act. We shouldn't be punished by not being able to see our grandchildren because, these people did this.
Right.
And so I don't think that that's actually been passed yet. I know it was being proposed. It was being argued in the Florida legislature. So something like that could come, down at a later date, possibly. But as the law currently stands, grandparents really have no rights under Florida law.
Gotcha. All right. So I can tell my mom if she wants to see the kids, she's got to bake for me.
Got to bake for you, clean the house.
Get something out of it. All right. Next question. And again, if you do have a question, you want to send it to us, you can email us, ask@dewittlaw.com, ask@DEWITT law.com, or you can also call and leave a voicemail like Jim did at 407-53 Moses. All right. Next question. My ex-husband owes me court-ordered alimony and has not paid me in almost 3 years. He moved to Florida recently, lives in like $1 million home. I've served him a few times, but he never showed up for court. The judge has him in contempt here in Massachusetts. I don't know what I need to do to start a Florida case. Is it motion for contempt case due to alimony in Massachusetts, or do I start a motion for alimony in Florida? I have all my papers and judgment here in Massachusetts. I just don't know where to begin in the state of Florida.
So I'm assuming, for this question that she still lives in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It sounds like the former husband moved to Florida. And so obviously I can't really give you advice regarding Massachusetts law. Here in Florida, typically what they would do is file a writ of bodily attachment, which basically is an order where the sheriff goes and arrests the person until they pay the alimony. And usually as part of that, there has to be a purge, meaning you can basically buy your way out of jail by paying the alimony or paying a portion of the alimony. Usually they have to show that there is an ability to pay it. So there'll be a hearing of some kind showing what your ability to pay is. If you're living in $1 million home, that's not going to go real well in your favor.
Right.
So, again, I don't know Massachusetts law. You could, possibly domesticate the judgment here, basically where you take the order from the Massachusetts court, file it in the local court here in Orange County. You probably want to hire an attorney for that, and then basically have them, ask that a writ of bodily attachment be issued or some sort of other enforcement action take place. But that's typically how that would go.
Okay. We were talking earlier about, the lady was asking, he's in jail and I've had his stuff in my house for 3 years or whatever. Can I start throwing it away? What happens when you have somebody who has, I was making fun earlier saying, a stuffed teddy bear collection.
Right.
But for somebody that has, say collected these teddy bears from all around the world and, to them it's important and it's absolutely priceless to them. To the other person, to the ex or the spouse, it's garbage that's collecting dust.
Yep.
And I know that it's got to go to the courts, but like when it's something like that, and like, listen, this teddy bear, this is worth 6 figures, and to the other person, that's worth $12 if we're lucky. I'll give you the $12, just get it out. How do they decide that when it comes to settling a divorce in value?
Well, so I actually had a case similar to this where the client had a very large NASCAR collection. And literally the wife took it all and put it in trash bags. She thought it was trash. And it was a lot of memorabilia and, Hot Wheels cars and all that kind of stuff. But, later I think she realized there was value to it. And then it became an argument over how much it was worth. And in those kinds of scenarios, you basically have to hire an expert. Almost kind of like you'd see on like the show Pawn Stars, where somebody comes in who's like an autograph expert or, a collection expert of this type of, memorabilia or collector's items, whatever it may be. And so they come in and they do an appraisal. Each side can hire their own expert if they wanted to, or they can agree to hire one jointly and rely upon his or her opinion. There's also a situation that arises there where, if a collection like that, which is thousands of items, if you're going to sell that off piece by piece, that takes a lot of time and energy, and you're probably going to have to hire somebody to do that. So there's going to be a difference in value versus if you sell every piece individually or if you sell it as a lot. Typically, if you're selling it as a lot, it's going to be a discounted price, but there's a lot less effort there.
Okay.
So then you kind of have to value it both ways and see, how are we going to value this? Are we going to sell it off individually? Are we going to hire somebody to do that? And then you either have to agree on a value or you go to court and each of your experts presents testimony, just like, a real estate appraisal would testify as to the value of a home. They would testify as to the value of the collection.
Okay.
And ultimately it'd be up to the judge to determine which expert they found more credible and why, and go with that value. But there's this, there's a meme on the internet of 2 people in a courtroom divvying up the Beanie Babies. And I mean, it does kind of go along those lines. And sometimes, maybe you agree to split the collection somehow. And you have to go through and list out every item that, each person's going to receive, and it's tedious and time consuming. I can tell you judges don't like dealing with that because it is tedious and time consuming.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But that's the other way to do it, is just say, hey, we're going to split it. You keep this, I keep this, and whatever you get, you get.
You take the Beanie Babies, I'll take the Tesla.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite judges who's no longer on the bench, he's retired now. He used to say with situations like this, he'd say, okay, you write me everything you want from the collection, and the other spouse, you write me everything you want from the collection. Then you take the list and you just switch them. And so it's kind of like the peanut butter and jelly.
Right. Yeah.
Cut it. One kid gets to cut it. One kid gets to choose.
Right.
Same idea there. So people got wise to that pretty quickly.
Yeah. I'm sure. Like, wait, no.
Yeah.
We only have a couple of minutes left. Real quick, what should somebody prepare before meeting with an attorney when it comes to a divorce?
Well, a lot of what a divorce is going to be financial. So, I always kind of describe a divorce as it's kind of, separating business partners basically, because a marriage really is a business partnership. So you don't need all the details, but you really want to kind of have a general idea of your financial picture as much as you can. I know a lot of times people aren't informed of the other side's finances, but know as much as you can. And then kind of have an idea, if you have kids, what you think the time sharing schedule or custody schedule is going to look like, what you think is in their best interest. And then, of course, any areas that you think might be contentious. that might be more difficult to resolve, that might require court intervention to resolve. And so just kind of be thinking about that. And that's some of the issues the book kind of talks about.
Okay.
We'll walk you through those steps. I think there's actually a whole chapter on what to do before you meet with an attorney and start preparing that information. Because obviously that initial consultation, while it's going to be more generalized advice because we don't have all the financial documents and details, that's all comes out as part of the case. We're trying to get a general roadmap of how your case is going to go. And so the more of that information you can give us, the better the consultation is going to be.
So you don't have to spend months trying to get every single digit, everything completely organized. You guys ask those kinds of questions and get the information as needed, but just having a general idea of things, that's what you should come in with.
Yeah, exactly. That way we know, is alimony going to be an issue in your case?
Okay.
What kind of assets do we need to value and distribute? Just having that general idea of, how many issues they're going to be, how are we going to get them resolved? That is good information for us to have.
Good to know. And if that's one of the chapters here in the book, that's some great information. Again, if you want to grab a copy of it, it is available on Amazon. DeWitt's Divorce Guide, your guide to divorce in the state of Florida, right here, written by Mo DeWitt. All right, we'll get to our Mo Pro Tip of the Week coming up in just a few minutes. You're listening to the DeWitt Law Review right here on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. You got a question still you want to try and get in? Ask at DeWittLaw.com, ask at DeWittLaw.com, or call and leave a voicemail at 407-53 Moses. We'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to the DeWitt Law Review on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk.
Hey, I just want to say thank Mo for all that he does for all of us BDMs and all here for Tom and Dan. And if you're ever injured on the go, just call Mo.
All right, brother. We're here at the BVM 2022 Beach Bath. Injured on the go, just call Mo. If you're injured on the go, just call Mo.
Welcome back to the DeWitt Law Review on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Jay Edwards here with Mo DeWitt of the DeWitt Law Firm. Send your questions in. If you've got a question, you need some legal advice from Mo, to ask at DeWittLaw.com, or call and leave a voicemail 407-53 Moses. Also, if you've got a question anytime and you don't necessarily want to ask it on the air, you can also call the office anytime, 24 hours a day, 1-800-DeWitt-Law. That's 1-800-DeWitt-Law. Got our Mo Pro Tip of the Week coming up in just a few minutes, but let's get to Benny's question real quick. He emailed us in and said, here's my problem with my rental property I live in. It's literally falling apart. He says, my lease expired 6 years ago and I never signed another one, so I'm just now month to month. I have no contract and paid first and last when I moved in. And he says, I have a home that I'm moving into soon. I cannot pay the rent since my home is technically not legal to live in at all and not insured. I have pics, I have video too, and I've provided evidence of this. There is sewage pouring into my home. What does Benny do in this situation other than run?
Yeah, run is right. So with any rental property, there's an implied warranty of habitability. That basically means it has to be suitable to live in. So it doesn't matter what your lease says. If it's a residence that they're renting to you, it has to be suitable to live in. So that typically means, having running water, having electricity, having heat. Funny enough, the statute doesn't include air conditioning in Florida,
But it does heat.
But it does heat.
Ooh.
And of course, functioning toilets, not having sewage in your property.
Yeah.
And there's also some opinions about, having working locks on windows and doors and some stuff like that. Basically, the bare essentials that you would need to reside in a property.
Right.
Here, having sewage in a property absolutely makes it uninhabitable, in my opinion. So in this situation, you can give notice to your landlord and move out immediately. The courts don't want you living in some place that is truly unsafe.
So you don't have to give like a 30 days notice or anything like that? I guess if he's already sent some stuff.
Not in this situation. If something is truly uninhabitable, you can move out immediately.
Okay.
You do not need to wait. Now, typically, he mentions here that he was on a month-to-month lease. on that, typically you have to give 30 days notice before you vacate the property, essentially. But when you have a landlord or a property rather, who's breached that warranty of habitability, it's uninhabitable, you can immediately move out, because I don't think any court is going to expect you to live there with your
I hope not.
your waiters on going through sewage to get you your bed or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, he can absolutely move out. Now, that doesn't mean that the landlord's not going to argue with you on the security deposit, and you may end up in court and things like that. I would recommend, in a situation like this, put them on notice as soon as possible in writing. Have documentation that you put them on notice. Let them know you're moving out as soon as possible. Keep them informed. Don't just move out and not tell them.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
That's where people get into a lot of trouble.
Okay.
But yeah, put them on notice. Tell them what the issue is. If it can't be immediately fixed, move out until it can be fixed, or just move out and terminate the lease altogether.
And that's with that certified letter and a regular letter, so they got it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
cool. All right, we got about a minute and a half here, and I know that we got to get to our pro tip of the week. What do you have for us?
So I'll bring it back to where we started the show with, and it's something I preach on this show about a lot, is just uninsured motorist coverage. Again, in my opinion, is the absolute most important coverage that you can have in Florida. It still shocks me how many people don't know about it, how many people don't have it. And, Florida, I think last I checked, I think this is still true, is the only state in the nation that does not require bodily injury coverage, which, bodily injury coverage is basically the insurance that you have. So if you hit somebody and hurt somebody, that covers them. In Florida, we don't have to have that.
Right.
All we have to have is $10,000 to cover property damage to a vehicle, and the PIP, or the no fault coverage, which is up to $10,000. So if somebody hits you and hurts you, they can legally be on the road and have no coverage to cover you. And that's why uninsured motorist coverage is so important. Plus, we talked about in the beginning of the show, it covers if you're on your bicycle and you get hit by a car. It covers if you're, walking on the sidewalk and you get hit by a car. It covers if you're in a store or in a shop and a car comes driving through the window of the store, just like happened at the Phantom Fireworks in Melbourne over there. Fortunately, in that case, nobody was injured, but someone was injured. That can still cover you. So it's very important coverage to have. You know how crazy the roads are in Florida already.
Oh, yeah.
You want to make sure you're properly insured. And, frankly, it's not that expensive to add to your policy. So give your insurance agent a call. I don't sell insurance, but I'm just giving you advice.
Just a tip.
Give them a call. See what it would cost to add it to your policy. If you're ever in an accident, I've had many people who have been in accidents without it, and they go, I know I should have had it. I'm adding it right now.
I added it based on your suggestion, and it wasn't very much. So there you have it. It's your Mo Pro Tip of the Week. You are listening to the DeWitt Law Review right here on 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Send those emails in. We'll get to your questions next week. Ask@DeWittLaw.com or call 407-53-MOSES.
Congratulations on 305.